Good evening, lunatics. Hey, let's do. You got your TikTok up?
Um,
Because
it
I
needed my
can.
stream key, and I have no idea. We still don't have any idea how
Well,
to get
if
our stream
you
key.
if you if you go to our live, I'm live on TikTok right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to our live, I should be able to add you. Just turn your volume down because you'll be able to hear me through the headset, but they can hear me through my mic, and they'll be able to hear you through your phone.
Turn you down.
Oh, invite sent. Nice. Okay. We're trying some simulcasting. Uh-oh.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I got a
Boy,
tripod here I can use.
I'm going to turn that down. Okay. Now, how do I... It'd be nice if I could make you the same size as me because I've seen people do this. Well, maybe it's going to wait until you're accepted. So, for those of you lunatics in the chat, um,
And I think
Larry's in Vegas putting the blackjack tables out of business. So let's see. Sounds loud and clear on YouTube.
let me wipe the front of the camera here. Everybody always neglects that when they hand you their phone for a selfie. I think that should do it.
There he is.
Hey.
Okay. Now, how do I make you? I've seen people have like double screen. How does that work? We're learning on the fly.
Absolutely. Love to see it.
Well, I don't want to send gifts. What's that mean? Okay. Well, maybe somebody will tell. Well, anyway, y'all should be able TikTok. You should be able to hear him and hear me, and advice and YouTube. You should hear us both. So onward and upward. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for stepping in as an honorary lunatic while Larry is off doing whatever he's doing in Vegas. I've always heard it said, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So we'll just let him at it. I know he loves that blackjack, though. So I think we should start with kind of an introduction because I'm aware of Freightwaves and What the Truck, and I've met a bunch of the people down there, and I'm aware of you. But I think let's start with giving the audience kind of who you are and how you got here and how'd you get hooked up with Freightwaves and go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Martin. I was a driver over the road. My entire driving career encompassed 15 years. I started in 2007. I did OTR for 7-8 years. I started at a mega carrier, Schneider, back when they still did new driver CDL training.
Been there.
And
do they not do that anymore?
No, they don't.
Really?
Yeah. I think not long after I left them, they stopped doing that, which is a real shame because they had pretty good training at the time and even better training back in the past. My dad started with Schneider back in '92, and that was back in the days when they still had the skid pad. You ever hear about that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did they still show the video of that guy, that Wisconsin guy, talking about you got to declutch?
No.
You know
but I can imagine. My dad said he would get yelled at by the instructor because he would feather the steering wheel, and it wouldn't jackknife. And the guy's like, no, you got to crank it so it because they want you to jackknife it to you. Yeah. So you get the feeling of it. And now, so sadly, that was gone. The rumors were either the water bill was killing them or the town was complaining because the water pressure would die every time they fired it up. So by the time I went there, and when I started in 2007, they had the simulators.
Okay.
And they're like a complete joke compared to just a video game, not even actual simulator, but just the video games they got nowadays.
I did the simulator with Landstar one time, and it it was a joke. I mean, it doesn't even feel like you're driving anything. And I'm trying to control this thing, and I'm like running over people and fences and stuff. And she's like, "Yeah, that's fine. Just." And I'm like, "This was a complete waste of time."
Yeah.
I drove for Schneider in '07. Let's think that I went back on the road in November of '06 and drove for Schneider through about, I want to say March of '08. So
Okay.
I guess I was there at the same time that you were.
Yeah. Where are you based out of?
I lived in Columbus. So I did OTR. I went to Evergreen, Alabama, out of orientation and picked up my truck at the old Landstar pool yard that they had bought. They had just bought Landstar Pool, and they sent me down to Evergreen to pick up my truck. And then I ran OTR. And then I did Dollar General out of Zanesville, which was a nightmare.
Those are
I bet
those are all rough accounts.
I am still banned from the Zanesville Dollar General. I'm
Oh
probably
wow.
still not allowed on the property. Um, and then I ran team with my cousin for a while, and then we moved to Columbus, and I did a Sears dedicated deal, like hauling lawnmowers and stuff. And then I went to work for a local company. But at that time, I really couldn't say anything bad about Schneider. Um, one of the interesting things about the good old days, I started my first company didn't have a Qualcomm or anything, so I got just the littlest taste of what that was like, where it was payphones,
Yeah.
and there was no communication in the truck. And I went to Schneider, and they had this micro 18. You remember
Yeah.
micro 18?
I couldn't remember the numbers, but as soon as you said macro, I just got hit with like a wave of
Yeah,
memories.
micro 18. And what was so funny about that is, I remember one time sitting at probably Carlisle at the, what do they call them, operating center?
OCs, yep.
OC. I was sitting at Carlisle. No, it must have been Charlotte. Anyway, it was one of the places where they had the driver training. And this brand new kid just come out of the school, and I think he'd just got done with his trainer, and we're chatting, and he's like, "Well, do you have any advice for you?" And I said, "Yeah, stay out of this room, okay? Because the bullshit is about 4 feet deep, okay, and you can't avoid it. And so, if don't believe anything you hear from anybody in this room." And he just kind of looked at me. He's like, "But what about you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm just telling you, okay." Truck drivers will lie to you, especially when they figure out that you're new. So just stay away from that. Now, a friend of mine was in a situation. We did an episode about this moons ago. It's called Highway Refugee. Was it good one? Look it up. But he, going through a divorce and was basically homeless, and had went to work for a Landstar BCO that was a disaster. And I'm like, "Well, dude, just Swift, Schneider, whoever. I mean, you need a place to live, and you need money." And Schneider told him, like, and this was 17, that you had to sign this pledge that you would not use your cell phone, or not even Bluetooth. And he's like, "Well, I'm not doing that." And they're like, "Well, you can't come here." And he went to Swift, who apparently doesn't care. But and when my truck blew up, I was a BCO at Landstar from 2014 to 2017, and my truck blew up, and I failed. And I was on the phone with a Swift recruiter before the shop even told me what was wrong with the truck, because I just knew, I need money. I have a CDL. I'll go drive for Swift. Maybe I'll be a trainer. Maybe and I was there for 30 days and lived to tell about it. So you were started at Schneider, and you did 7 years, and then
Oh no. I'm saying my OTR was 7 years. I only stayed at Schneider for the 18 months. I paid off my CDL training, moved back to Florida, and wouldn't you know it, it was right in the middle of like the worst recession we've seen. So I went from driving for a large mega carrier to this guy called himself Sawgrass Transport. He owned two power units down in Loxahatchee, Florida. He drove one, I drove the other. And it was like going from one end of the spectrum to the other in the trucking industry. You're not just a number, but at the same time, trying to get a paycheck out of that guy was like pulling teeth. His truck was just an absolute. Do you allow swearing on your stream?
Oh, go ahead.
It was an absolute pile of shit. It was a Freightliner Columbia, I believe, and the headlights were just completely smoked out. Like you couldn't drive at night with the thing, and he wouldn't believe me. And then we did a load together, and he tried to go through West Virginia with them, and he was like, "Yeah, we got to fix these headlights." Then we did a load together, and he never paid me, so I just stopped driving. I quit driving for a period of about 3-4 months. I worked at Target, stocking the shelves in the freezer, and just losing my mind working. It was that time in Florida was very common, where a lot of people came from construction, housing, etc., and then everything went bust, and then so they all went to retail. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're working at Target, Walmart, you name it. Everybody there had a stellar resume. You know, either they were doctors or lawyers or whatever, and now they're working retail, stocking shelves. And then this dream job just like fell out of the sky and landed in my lap. I went to high school with this kid Ryan. His dad was a driver for this company, Green Valley Transportation, out of Tracy, California, and they're a DoD contractor. They haul military freight, and they're team only. And so you got to have a security clearance, you got to pass the background check, all that good stuff. And the guy that he was driving with wanted to bring his wife on board and split off to be their own team. So that was leaving Ryan's dad without a co-driver. And his dad asked him if he knew any drivers down in Florida. And he's like, "Oh yeah, let me call my friend Justin. We went to high school together." So he messaged me on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to meet my dad? He's looking for a new co-driver, blah, blah." And like, I wasn't taking any of it seriously because I had no idea what the hell he was talking about.
Yeah.
So we meet up at a bar in Palm Beach, Florida, and over a couple of beers, he explains the job to me, what he does. He says, like, we stay out for 4 weeks, we go home for a week. We could stay out longer and make more money. He's like, but I got a girlfriend here. I want to, try and balance, the home life with the work life. I said, okay, we'll try it. And man, yeah, that kicked off the next 2 years of the best driving I'd ever did. And then he retired, and I brought my dad on to drive with me because he's retired Air Force, and he was trying to get back into truck driving, and nobody would hire him because he hadn't driven in probably 10, 15. He could drive just fine, but everybody at the time was looking for, recent experienced drivers. And so he's retired Air Force, and that made getting on bases a lot easier because you just show your military ID, and they're like, "Oh, welcome back, Master Sergeant. Come on in."
Yeah.
And yeah, we did that for a few years, and we were so close. We were all the teams that we were kind of like the Landstar teams. Every Landstar truck we ever ran across hauling that stuff was just like palaces on wheels, and we were like, "That's a bit much for us." But all the FedEx custom critical teams that we would talk to, they were all recent retired military couples that were just kind of like living out the twilight years of their life, hauling, good freight, in those like nice little expedited trucks that you can fit anywhere. And so
Yeah.
we were like, okay, let's take a look at that. So we approached our boss Steve about buying a truck like that and leasing on to Green Valley, and he's like, "Nah, I like driving he likes to do what they call drum trains, where you have one dormitory box on the frame of the truck, and then you either have a van, trailer, or a flatbed with like 6, 7, or 8 dormitory boxes on the flatbed." And that's how they make their money, because they can cram multiple loads on that, and one load will pay for the fuel, and the rest of it's just money in their pocket. And so we told him that we wanted to try the expeditor van, and he's like, "Nah." So we were kind of looking for an exit, and then just by happenstance, I had some friends in Philadelphia that offered me a room at their place for rent. So I took it, and I switched from OTR to finding a more local route. I did 2 days at this company called New Century Transport, right there outside of Philadelphia. They no longer exist. They were an LTL company.
Yeah.
They took really good care of the drivers, but man, that was some hard. Like every day, you're going from Philly up to New York City, up in the boroughs. Like that's some rough driving up there. Every day is a 15, 16-hour day. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall with that. Then I worked out of the Packer terminal in Philly for a bit, hauling cans, just across the street. That was also like, just it made you want to put a gun to your head, because that kind of job, you were paid by the trip. So you could come in, bang out 10 trips a day, and then come in the next day and maybe do 2 trips. And it was all out of your control. Either the traffic sucked, or every container chassis that you picked up had a flat tire that you had to get fixed. So that all those, like, if I'm doing something that's like impacting my pay, that's fine. But if my pay is being impacted by stuff out of my control, like that would drive anybody nuts.
Yeah.
So I left that, and I found a job driving for a mail contractor on Craigslist. I drove for at the time they were called Pat Solomon and Companies. They're
Seen them.
basic. They're the largest mail contractor in the country, and basically they're just like a conglomeration of all the smaller carriers that they got pulled in, and they've only gotten bigger since I left. I drove for them for 3 years. Then I drove for another contractor called Beam Brothers. They no longer exist. And then the last 5 years I was driving. I was actually at the postal service,
Okay.
hauling trucks for them.
So what are you driving now, or are you just doing?
No, I jokingly say I drive a desk.
Yeah,
Um, while I was at the
as do I.
while I was at the postal service, I kind of settled in. Like I had enough seniority. I had a really good route. I had weekends off, good benefits, decent pay. And then I saw this post on Twitter by Dooner one day that was like, "Hey, are you a truck driver? Can you edit videos and can you make memes?" And I was like, "That sounds like me." So I messaged him, and he's like, "You're perfect. You're exactly what I'm looking for." And I said, "I don't believe you." So I applied, and yeah, it's been a wild ride since. He's been a really good mentor, boss, you name it.
Have you ever considered or given any thought to maybe a couple of drops of Valium in his coffee, like just
No. That guy can bring the energy. Like he's just hype. I wish I had that kind of energy on there. I could be like that off air, no problem.
yeah,
But yeah, being in front of the camera was like really not like what I was interested. Like I had zero interest whatsoever in being in front of the camera. But it was like second day on the job. He's like, "Hey, you're coming up on Wednesday. Come on the show." I'm like, "Oh crap." He was also instrumental in pushing me onto TikTok too. Like I really didn't want to do any TikToks uh, with the face, and the first one I did, it had like 70,000 views in like the first day, and I had to sit back and think like, okay, either I did something brilliant or I did something absolutely stupid because
hmm
nobody goes that viral like on accident.
yeah,
And I'm sure you've seen how it works. It's basically as long as you're talking about a topic that we call it heat. You know, anything that gets a lot of heat. I was talking about a driver. He had a heart attack or some kind of heart issue. Blamed it on sleep. Um, Drove across the street and killed a family, and then the company got hit with a nuclear verdict, and they're out
hmm
of business. All I did was I took a screenshot of that article and then put my face on there with a green screen filter, and I said, "Hey guys, this is why you gotta like check your sleep. You know, get good with your health. You know, you're not just putting your career at risk, you're risking the entire company too." And people just like blew up in the comments saying like, you know what you, either you don't know what you're talking about or that guy's an idiot. Basically, anything you can get that's like polarizing.
yeah.
The algorithm apparently loves it.
Pretty much everything that we do is polarizing,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
and Larry has a gift, of pissing people off. The one we've stirred the most trouble up with was we were at the end of a show. It was probably 5 or 6 weeks ago, and all of the broker heat had started. Rates are coming down. Everybody's blaming the broker. And Larry just casually says, "Well, you know why these truck drivers hate these brokers, don't you? It's because the brokers are better at their job than the truck drivers are at theirs."
Mm-mm-mm.
Oh, and it's so not even thinking about it. I'm like, "Oh, that's a spicy little clip." I just dropped
Yeah.
that on top. Holy shit. It went, but and what was funny was at the beginning, everybody's like, "This guy's a broker." And I'm going, "No, we're a fleet of trucks, but you know, we don't blame others for our mistakes or our successes." And then Anik Lesage from Small World Ventures down in Florida, she pissed a bunch of people off, and I'm like, "Hey, let's get together." So I had her as a co-host, and um, so but it's been it's funny because I only had a TikTok account because Trump had threatened to ban it. Like,
Mm,
what was that? 3 years ago?
yeah.
And my profile, this was my profile picture, right? And that's the only reason I got it. I had never scrolled. I just, oh, Trump threatened to ban it. So I made one, right? And
Streisand
then
effect.
I didn't do anything with it. And then one day I just opened it up and I started scrolling. Of course, if you're 47 and starting a TikTok account, you have to break the algorithm because it's nothing but boobs. That's it. It's just TikTok and titties, and then finally you can like start looking at other content, and it finally breaks the algorithm.
You're right. I got to retrain mine again. I don't know why. It's like every month. It's like the beginning of the month or something. It like when I go to like the following page, I know exactly what I'm getting. It's all drivers, it's people I follow, they're great guys. But when I go to the For You page now, it's just like whatever the top viral trending stuff is.
Mhm.
It's like I don't care about a video that went viral 2 years ago, so I'm constantly telling it not interested, not interested, not interested. Um, the other thing too is like because this isn't like really my account, it's like the company account.
Mhm.
I think it kind of like has to try and guess like who's watching at
Yeah.
any given time. So who knows?
Yeah. But it's such a once I started consuming, I went, wow, what an amazing platform, because you were hearing conversations take place
Yes.
that don't happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
There was one funny thing a lady did, this probably 3 or 4 months ago. And she's like, if you want to see the difference between Meta properties, TikTok, and Twitter, go search France. And so she searched France on Instagram, and it was just art and architecture.
Yeah.
And same thing on Facebook and same thing. And then you went to TikTok, and it was everything's all hell's breaking loose.
Yeah.
Buildings are on fire. People are riding in the streets. And she's like, that's why TikTok's important. And I'm like,
Yeah. No,
okay.
the search is what's killing Google right now too, because people younger than us, rather than Google the hot restaurants in their area, they'll TikTok whatever the hot restaurants are in their area. And so rather than get like, so if you search for a restaurant on Google, you might have photos, you might see the reviews. Whereas if you're watching a TikTok of it, you see like the actual, people always, when Instagram was like really big early on, people were always complaining about people like taking photos of their food and posting it on Instagram. But now you have people that like take the videos of the restaurant. If you're going to one of those like restaurants where everything's like an experience or whatever, you got a nicely produced TikTok that somebody probably made because they like being there, or maybe they're like a paid content creator.
Yeah.
But either way, that's where people are getting their search results from now is through TikTok.
Yeah, it's fascinating that, I mean, we've been live on YouTube since about episode 55. So 110 episodes now, and almost every week. And we don't get near the engagement on YouTube that we do on TikTok. It's crazy.
I'm watching the comments here on like the restream. This is a pretty slick little interface. And I like that it tells you like what which program like all these people come from. So you got some YouTube, some Facebook.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Yeah. Read, please advise.
Yeah, which was weird. I saw somebody from LinkedIn. I'm like, where did that come from?
That was me. When it asked me to log in, it asked for
okay.
It asked for like all the different accounts I have. And so I plugged in LinkedIn and Twitter. And then of course, as soon as we went live, I get a text from Dooner and he's like, what's going on? Because I didn't know this, but I guess we're streaming live on Twitter.
Yeah. One thing that's one thing that I like about, we were using one called StreamYard, which was pretty good.
I think I've used some people with StreamYard.
But I was having some issues with it. So I'm Googling around and I found Restream, and then I realized that like I can invite someone, then you can stream it to all of your channels if you want to, which is pretty cool. So yeah, you've been in about 10 years less than I started in 97, 21 years old, didn't know nothing about nothing.
Yeah.
And then drove until 2002, and then swore I'd never drive again. I'm out. This is stupid. I think it would be funny to like poll truck drivers. How many times have you tried to quit? And and what are all the different things? I did satellite dish installs.
Oh, wow.
I drove a school bus. Don't ever do that. Trying to get out of it. And when I had kind of left, and in 2010 I came back, and I tried to have kind of a different attitude about it. And at that time, my belief was, incorrectly, but my belief was the only way that I could elevate, because we wanted to be a single income. I didn't want my wife to work. She wanted to homeschool the kids. Was I had to be an owner operator. And so January 1st of 2011, I got on a bus and I rode to St. Cloud, Missouri, or Minnesota. And I did 2.5 years with Anderson Trucking Service, which was great. I learned a ton. I leased a truck from them. But unfortunately, on the third lease, I got a 2011 Peterbilt that had emissions issues. And in 7 months, it cost me $50,000.
That was right when like the DEF and all that came about.
Yeah. And nobody could fix it. I mean, we changed everything from the turbo to the tailpipe. Nothing ever fixed it. And I was in Council Bluff, or I was in Des Moines, I think, or Council Bluffs or something up there. Anyway, I had friends that had gone to Lone Mountain and got trucks and went to Landstar. And at that time, it was get a truck, go to Landstar. Get a truck, go to. That's what you did. You got a truck, you went to Landstar. And so I called over there because I had considered that this truck was broke down for the last time. Okay, I'm done breaking down in this truck. And I called this girl answered the phone and I said, "What's the oldest truck you got?" She said, "07 Freightliner." I said, "Darn, I'm on my way." And I went over there. I looked at it. I signed the papers and took my truck back to Anderson and tried to lease on the Landstar. Didn't understand the gauntlet, as we call it, trying to get qualified for Landstar. So I took the truck back to Anderson. And let me think about this. In 2013, I did January to September in their truck. And I did September to December in my truck. I did $154,000 total revenue.
Whew.
75 of it was in my truck, October, November, December. I hit the ground, and then they had this weird somebody, you're walking the aisles at Walmart, and there will be a cardboard thing that has deodorant on it or whatever, right? Well, some company was wanting to send these out to various Walmarts. It'd be one pallet. And they kept trying to use LTL, but LTL would do nothing but destroy it or lose it.
Yeah.
So Anderson was like, "Here, we'll send a truck. You put 20 pallets or whatever on our truck, and we'll go do the multi-stops." Well, hell, I was clearing $6,000 a week, doing these multi-stop Walmart. It was printing money. And finally in April of 14, I moved my truck to Landstar and had a great 3 years, but found out the hard way in April of 17 that I could book freight, I could run loads. I was excellent at that. I was great at making money. What I was terrible at was saving money, and I wasn't running my business properly. And I had a second engine failure, and the last one put me down. And so I went away. And I'm like, okay, well, this owner-operator thing is done. Got a local job that I hated. I would work 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. So I would have to get up at 1:30, drive up there, do my 12-hour shift, drive home, walk in the door, kiss the kids on the head, and go straight to bed. So it was a worse existence than driving over the road. So in January of 18, I had this Jerry Maguire moment, where I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was like 4 a.m. I'm on a forklift. I'm freezing my ass off. I'm miserable. And I wrote this Facebook post, and I put it in a bunch of the Landstar groups. And it said, "Look, I killed the goose laying the golden eggs. I was a BCO. I had it like I liked it. I was making money, but I didn't prepare myself well. I didn't save money. I wasn't ready for when the bad things happen. So if you're reading this and you think that I'll get there someday. No, today it's right now, because it wasn't Landstar's fault. It wasn't the agent's fault. It wasn't the president's fault. It wasn't the government's fault. It was me. I did it. I killed this business. It was me." I hit post and shoved my phone in my pocket and think anything about it. Next day, my phone blows up. I'm getting all these messages from all these BCOs. "Come drive for me." I'm thinking, buddy, I wouldn't drive for you if you had the last truck on earth, because I know how y'all are. Y'all just as dumb as I was. You don't have a real business. Well, Larry saw it, and Larry's getting ready. He's done. He's done dealing with truck drivers. He's, I don't know, at that time, 50, 60 something years old. And he's like, "Screw this, I'm out." And he saw it, and he was like, "Well, this is different. This is a different attitude." So we got on the phone. In 5 minutes of talking to him, I was like, holy shit, this is a businessman. Yeah. And he gave me the opportunity that I needed, because we were about to get foreclosed on. I'm working 60 hours a week, can't make the bills. Not making enough money to dig us out of the hole that I'd made. And I thought, I went back to my truck and I looked at my numbers and I thought, okay, well, if all I do is do for him and his truck what I did for me and my truck at his pay rate, I'll double my income. And doubling my income right now saves my house. So my wife and I went to meet him, and he loved to put drivers on dedicated freight because he didn't have to mess with them,
Yeah.
and he loved FedEx. And he's like, well, hey, I put this FedEx thing together for you. And I'm sitting there thinking, God, I hate dedicated, but I'm not going to complain because my broke ass is going to get foreclosed on if I don't take this job. So I met him in Indianapolis, and we did our little orientation, and we're walking through Walmart. And he goes, listen, I got some bad news. I'm like, what happened? He said, well, the dedicated thing I had put together for you has fallen apart, so I'm going to have to let you run the board. I said, you bet your sweet asshole, man. Watch this. And I mean, he's taking wheelbarrows full of money to the bank because I had like 5 loads booked before we left Walmart. And at that time, the rates were huge, and it was $3 and $4 a mile. And I mean, I went from being foreclosed on to like a month ahead in my bills in like 6 weeks. It was insane.
You guys found a really good yin and yang, because I see this not just in trucking. It could be anything from web comics to animation to everything. Whenever you're trying to make something into a business, it usually takes 2 people, and they have to be 2 totally opposite personality types. You have one that's operational, and then you have one that's finance. I've seen this with I believe you had Mike Lombard on before. That's the situation he's in now. Mike is running the operations of the business, but then he has a business partner that deals with the finances. So I have full faith in everything he's doing. And you, like Mike Lombard, are both fans of extreme ownership. I don't know are you familiar with that?
I am. I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
You basically what the exact principles of extreme ownership are. You took everything that you knew you did wrong, and you blamed nobody but yourself.
Yeah. And it was good because, and something important Larry taught me is that you can never hire yourself. He's a 30 plus year or 40 plus year businessman, and you can't hire yourself. And when I came along, he kind of did that for the first time. But when we're trying to bring people into our program to give them the opportunity to learn from us, we use the Karate Kid example: wax on, wax off. Just keep doing it. Paint the fence, wax on, wax off, side to side. If just keep doing it, and we'll teach you the habits, because it's a whole different set of ideals when you're an employee than when you're a business owner. And we had a new hire a couple weeks ago, and something happened. And he goes, well, I told him to call you because I'm just a truck driver. And I went, ho, no. You stopped being just a truck driver when you came here, right? This is how we communicate. This is how we account. These are all of the things that we do because that's what business people do. And we don't do things from the standpoint of why a company driver would do it, which is just shut up and do what you're told. I have to get you to understand the why we do things. The how will work itself out because there could be 5 or 6 different hows. How do we do that? Oh, well, pick one.
What's the success rate been on it? Like some people, that's all. I used to see this in the Postal Service all the time, and there's a reason why people flock to that. Is that's all they want. They don't want all they want to do is come in, punch the clock, do 8 hours. We call it 8 and skate. You come in, you do your shift, you go home, and that job is in the rearview mirror. What would you say is like your success rate with that?
Well, last year was rough. We did not retain a single person that came to us in 2022.
Wow.
Now part of that was the market, and part of that was what we would do is we would bring you in for a weekend, and we would kind of wine you and dine you, and we would lay it all out. Here's what we do, and here's why we do it, and here's how we do it, and wish you the best of luck. Here's the loads. Well, that doesn't work. I mean, Landstar is such a different system than any company driver has ever experienced because it's as close as you can get to having your own authority without having your own authority. A lot of the day-to-day is very same. I'm calling somebody, I'm booking a load, but then I'm calling somebody else, I'm booking another load. And two completely different people, two completely different operations, two completely different kinds of freight. And so we sat down at New Year's. We locked ourselves in a room for 3 days, and we tried to identify the failure points. And it was always trip planning, because I can book you the best rates. You know, our average in May loaded mile was $3.28, with 16.8% deadhead. I can book the freight. Landstar's got the freight. But if you can't run it, if I can't hand you, because I've got to get them, you know, right now I'm booking for next Friday.
Yeah.
You know, well,
now, is that because you can see the load and you know exactly how you would run it? And
correct.
You're, you know, I don't want to say you assume, but you would think that somebody at whatever level they're at by the time they get to you would know how to run like that.
Right. And so we have to introduce them to our friend, the BSE 9000. This is the bullshit eliminator 9000. You have to do the math, right? And so if you're going to get the best that Landstar has to offer, you've got to get it a week ahead of time. If you're looking for a load today, it's going to be spot market garbage paying $2.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be looking ahead. And of course, I mean, we've spent a long time developing relationships with agents I mean, I can literally go, hey, I don't even have to say my name. You know, they know who I am, right? So, but I know who's got freight, and I know who's, you know, I know where the preloaded stuff is. But if I can't book a week ahead, and then you can't trip plan it so that you know how to brake or split brake or whatever it is you've got to do to get these puzzle pieces to fit together, then the trip is going to fall apart. And then when it does fall apart, now I'm trying to look for a load today, and all I'm going to find is spot market garbage.
Yeah.
You know, so we sat down and we broke the program up into 4 phases. Phase 1, I don't even give you a login to the board. I'm going to give you a load, a trip plan, a fuel routing. Just do what I say for 6 weeks. Then the second 6 weeks, I give you a login, and I say, okay, now here's the app. Here's you start picking your own fuel. You start doing your own trip plans. And then phase 3, we bring them back for a second orientation. Now we're going to talk about a bunch of the philosophical stuff that didn't matter on day 1. On day 1, I need you to scan your fuel receipt. I need you to scan your paperwork, and I need you to deliver on time. So for 6 weeks, it's and we have a reduced revenue goal. Our goal is $8,000 a week. We reduce it to $6,000 for the first 12 weeks, so that I'm not trying to kill them, because, you know, I can put an $8,000 or $10,000 week together and it'll just kill them, you know, because they're just not accustomed to what it takes to run an $8,000 week. By the time they get to about week 6, they're going, oh, okay, I kind of get how to route and how to plan. But dude, the most shocking thing that I've experienced since we began this kind of formal training program is truck drivers experienced 1 year minimum OTR to come to Landstar. They don't know how to drive trucks.
Yeah.
I can't read a map. Can't scale. Don't even know what a CAT scale is.
I harp on the low quality training that happens nowadays harder than anyone out there, because we would see that in the Postal Service. We could post a job for a Class A driver, and we'd say, oh, we'll leave it up for 3 days, and we'll get maybe 180 applicants in those 3 days. This is just in the Philadelphia area. Yeah. So local, home every day. You're probably going to be working overnight. You're going to be working weekends, but you're only working 8 hours if you want. You can do overtime if you want to. But yeah, we'll get 180 applicants, and you can disqualify 90 of them with just 3 questions. Do you have a license? Is it a Class A? Can you pass a drug test? There's 90% right there.
Yep.
Of that 10% that make it, then you start digging into their work history. You might lose some from that. And then after all the testing, background check, security clearance check, all this stuff, it's like $3,000 per application that the post office spends just to get somebody into orientation. Then they put you in a truck and they say, back it up the door 2, please. And they can't back up worth of shit. And they flunk guys out all the time. But just the 10% of that 90% that make it through the application process, maybe another 20% of that can actually drive on the range.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
I've noticed the quality of driver just it's just completely nosedive in the last 6-7 years.
So let me hit this roofing trucker. If the money is there and the loads are there, why can't you retain a driver? Well, we didn't retain anybody from last year. Now, so far, we've got, let me think about this. We've got 11 trucks seated. And out of the ones that we've hired since January 1st, only 2 have gone away. And I could have told you pretty much in the interview process they weren't going to make it, but we had an empty truck there and it was like, okay, we'll go ahead and bring them in. So it wasn't really a surprise.
So okay, let me ask you this. You're not you must have a pretty good like BS detector when it comes to hiring drivers now, because you're an accomplished driver yourself, as am I, and I can't tell you how many companies I talk to, and they just don't know how they'll hire anyone with a pulse because they have everything on paper, and I tell them that the hiring is completely ass backwards. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can lie on a resume, you can cheat a drug test, you can bullshit your way through a job interview. You cannot lie about being able to back a trailer.
Right.
That would be the first thing I have somebody do. Come in, sign a waiver. So if you stub your toe, you're not suing me for $1,000,000,000, and back that trailer up to the door, please. Let me see what you got.
Yeah.
And that right there will flush out all the bullshit right away.
Well, even, and of course, Landstar's very selective. I mean, it's not easy to get qualified at Landstar. I know of at least five that I desperately wanted to hire. I'm gonna fuck it. I'm gonna do it anyway. All 5 of these were minorities. All 5 of them probably had some bullshit misdemeanor, felony, something, from their youth, and they wouldn't hire them. And of course, they won't tell
Yeah.
me why. I have
Yeah.
to guess. But they had the attitude. They had the perspective. They had everything that I want. I can teach you how to back up a truck. I can teach you how to drive, shift a transmission. I can't teach you how to have the right attitude. I can't make that.
Yeah.
And so there was at least 5, I promise you, at least 5 that we desperately wanted and couldn't get them through the qualification process. And I can only assume because they won't, well, we can't tell you.
I
Okay.
wonder if it's also too because of like I don't know how compartmentalized Landstar is with their stuff, but like there are divisions in Landstar that haul military freight.
Right.
So I have to assume, or I would think that like having people on your payroll with those backgrounds might hurt your chances of getting
It
free
could.
credit. Like,
It
I have no
certainly
idea.
could. But that's the thing. I have to guess. But anyway,
But there are plenty of companies out there that still hire felons, and I have no problem whatsoever with somebody trying to get like a second chance at life. And like you said, trying to find somebody with that attitude is
mhm,
exactly what you're talking about. That's really hard to find
yeah.
because we call them in the post office, we call them slugs. People that they're just a meat in the seat with a pulse. But maybe one out of like every 20 people they hire will be like some rock star driver, and you're like, damn, dude, you're waiting. What are you doing working here? I get that it's an easy job here, but you could be working somewhere else, just absolutely killing it. And they're like, been there, done that. I'm just here to do my time.
I have a great post office story. We used to haul a lot of bulk mail for R.R. Donnelly with
Mm.
Anderson in a van. And it was around Christmas time. And I don't remember what bulk mail center I was in. It was in a large city. Dude, these people were moving at the speed of smell. And I was, I
Yeah,
was, I was, I was getting frustrated. And I look around the corner and all I can see is a Santa Claus hat. Okay. Now this dude, this black dude was probably 6'9". He was enormous. And it was even better because he was huge. He looked like an ex-football player. He was just big monster with that Santa Claus hat on. Dude, he came back there and he cleaned house. And all of a sudden, it was like you injected all these people with cocaine. I mean, they start unloading trucks and moving around. And he just walked through there, did one of these, and barked a few commands in like a blower register that I can't even imagine. It was awesome. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
yeah. There's a lot of overlap between like military and the post office. The clocks we use, it's not military time. It's like these weird clocks that use 100 digits instead of 60. Yeah. So you clock out at like 0059 instead of 59 minutes to midnight or whatever. Yeah, it's just weird. It's a whole weird time. But yeah, a lot of vets, because you can use your any time you have in the service counts towards your time towards retirement when you're in the postal service. So,
Nice.
if you do like 10 years in the service and you quit and you join the postal service, you got 10 extra years. You don't have to quit. You don't have to work.
Nice. Well, it's, back to the training thing. My when my when I started in 97, I feel like they did a pretty good job. I mean, because we didn't really get the CDL meals until the kind of later 2000s.
Yeah.
But I had to pass a test and Larry started driving in 2008. He had to pass a test. So he had to prove that he could back up, and he had to prove that he could shift and turn and answer questions about hours of service and all this kind of stuff. And when I get people here who are, again, qualified, experienced drivers, and they're like, well, yeah, I don't know how to slide tandems, or they have no clue how hours of service work. None.
Yeah.
And of course, we have to maximize hours of service in what we do to make the kind of money that we make at Landstar. You have to maximize your hours of service. You have to know how to split brake. You have to know how to do that stuff, and you have to understand it. And the biggest part of our now one-day orientation is basically explaining what Blue Ribbon and Landstar is, and then trip planning, map reading. We have a guy that's been with us now since like March or April 2020. So, but 3 years. Came to us 23 years old, was a senior trainer at Covenant, God help us. And he gets here, and the very first load I put him on was a load of empty totes. And empty tote loads are even more complicated because they have to be placarded because they have residue in them. Well, he had 32 placards. There were 8 different UN numbers on the trailer. So he's got to put 32 placards on here. He had problems with the paperwork. Well, with a bulk container, you can't run the PA Turnpike. Yep. And so I remember I've got my phone in my hand, and I'm looking at Google Maps, and I'm like, well, hey, I think if you, turn here and left there and right there, and we can get you on this road and try to bypass the turn. And I could just hear the silence, the crickets. And I went, Richie, do you know how to read a map? Oh, no, we weren't allowed to have maps.
Yeah.
I'm going, and if you want to get him really riled up, ask him about the time that he came up to an interstate closure, and in order to make on-time delivery, he took a detour to go around the wreck. They fined him $50 for going out of route. I mean, that's and so I never thought, oh, well, sure, we'll teach business. I never thought I'd have to teach truck driving, but I do every day.
The only real negative I had during my training with Schneider was when they teamed me up with a training engineer. The guy that I was teamed up with had a absolute sweet cake run. So his job was so easy. It actually kind of like limited my growth early on, because it was basically just, we went from Indianapolis to St. Paul, Minnesota, and back. We'd leave the yard in Indy in the afternoon. We'd stop at a truck stop in Menominee, Wisconsin for the night. Get up in the morning, do the drop off at the Ford plant. It was a drop and hook, and then we beat feet back to Indianapolis that night. And I did that for 2 weeks. And he's like, "Okay, you're on your own." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." And then they sent me back to Gary, got my truck, and then they're like, "Okay, you're going to go from Gary to Chicago, pick up the load, take it to Menominee, a different Menominee, Wisconsin, up near the Panhandle." And I was like so out of my, like, the first 2-3 weeks, I got lost constantly. The mental stress, like, I'm like, by day 5, I'm like on the phone, like sobbing into the phone with my mom, saying like, I hate this job, I want to come home. And then the next day, like, a little mental switch like flipped, and I was just like, okay, this is you got to do this. Like, you literally have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And from that day, it was just like, if I screwed up, okay, that sucks. Let's not do that again. How can we not do that? I don't think enough companies emphasize that kind of training. And I think another thing too, like, if you wanted to be a training engineer at Schneider when I was there, you needed 2 years minimum accident free to be a training engineer. there are people on TikTok right now with 3 months of driving experience who are training brand new drivers for the carriers that they drive for, and you guys know who you are.
Yep.
And it just blows my mind. First of all, if they even have insurance, like what insurance company would be stupid enough to cover these companies? Chances are they don't. So they're all self-insured. I just, to me, it's a race to the bottom. You have newbies, you have babies training babies, and that's just a recipe for disaster. And I don't understand why more companies don't see the writing on the wall with that.
Yeah. Well, this right here goes with exactly what I was just thinking about. Seems like older generation with a hand-me-down knowledge survives better than this regulated training courses that they make drivers take these days.
Yeah.
And what I would, the one thing that I think was so different is when I started in 1997, there was no cell phones, no tablets, no internet. At CB radio.
Yeah.
And when I did something stupid, I heard about it, and
Yes.
there was the brotherhood, so to speak. But I saw experienced drivers as my elder, and I would listen, especially because lots of times I was afraid I was going to get my ass whipped, I backed into a bull hauler about 3 months in. And terrifying. Of course, I didn't know that I did it. I was trying to blindside back in the rain. What an idiot.
Yep.
And I just scraped the fender on this beautiful 379 Peterbilt, and my DOT bumper knocked his hubcap on his steer axle off. Damn. Well, I didn't know that I did it. I just couldn't get in the hole, so I turned around and go find another spot. And so I walk in. I'm completely oblivious, and I get a tap on the shoulder, and I turn around and look down because this dude was like 5'5" with that's as much cowboy hat. You just hit my truck. I'm like, what? Yep, you just hit my truck. And I thought, I'm going to die. I'm dead. He's going to kill me. I backed into a bull hauler. But he was so good because he went, look, you scratch my fender, you knock my hubcap off. If this is the worst that ever happens to you, you're going to be okay. And I'm like, okay, thank God he didn't kill me. Because I thought for sure I was going to take a whipping. But we don't have that anymore because we're windows up. Podcast on. I don't even own a CB radio, I haven't used one for 10 years because I got tired of listening to that garbage. But I've always believed if we would teach courtesy, safety works itself out. Because the one thing that I see that we had back then was four-wheelers were our problem back then.
Yeah.
But if I'm driving a truck right now, I get more courtesy from four-wheelers than I do from big trucks.
Watch out for those white Volvos.
Yeah. A big truck will put me in a ditch a whole lot quicker than a four-wheeler will, you know? If we would teach courtesy, hey, be respectful of your other drivers. If you see someone in the right lane coming up on something slow, back out of the throttle, let them out. Cause that's what we did back in the good old days.
Yeah. There's this whole thing with the speed limiters trying to be mandated now. And like that was like one of our last like huge videos on TikTok. And I've said from the beginning, I think any politician who's in favor of some kind of speed limiter mandate should be stuck behind two semis trying to pass each other to and from work every single day for the rest of their lives. And they get it. As soon as you mention the frustration of trying to pass two semis, they go, oh yeah, that sucks. But then without skipping a beat, they go, yeah, but we need to implement it to every single commercial vehicle on the road in the entire country. It's like, how stupid can you be?
Well, and I thought we learned this lesson. When I started driving, Texas had a split speed limit. Yeah. Illinois had a split speed limit. Ohio had a split speed limit. And the crashes were massive all the time. We got rid of the split speed limits and the crashes went down. I thought for sure we had learned this lesson.
Yep.
But no, because we don't learn lessons here in America. And I despise with every fiber of my being these advocacy groups, Road Safe America and Truck Safety Coalition.
Yeah.
I hate them with every fiber of my being.
They're barnacles on like the side of the treasury that they're just sucking everything they can out of it.
And they, to me, in my view, they exploit the pain and suffering of someone who in a lot of cases has lived through an unthinkable tragedy. And here come these bastards in to profit off of that. It just, Makes me
and I will say there are some that we work with. So like Operation Lifesaver, they deal with more train crashes than trucks. They're a good organization. There are some good ones out there.
Yeah, there's a few, but the ones that are always like I remember. Do you remember they were trying to get the double 33s? They were trying to get
I don't remember
so they wanted two 33-foot pups
that.
instead of two 24-foot pups or 26-foot, whatever they are now. They wanted an extra 5 foot, I think. So I guess there was two 26s, which is 52. They wanted two 33s to get more, not more weight. They wanted more
extra
cube
pallet. Yeah.
to haul all of our Amazon crap, right? That's what they wanted. And so I think it was Diane Feinstein. It might have been Barbara. It was one of those nut jobs from California. And they had one of those trucks parked there. And at all the safety groups lined up. And they're like, this truck is as tall as an 8-story building. It's 70 feet long. I'm like, hey, Cupcake, you know how long my 53-foot trailer with a sleeper cab is?
70 feet.
It's the same length, you know.
Yeah.
But of course, they're preying on the ignorance and kind of incompetence of the American public to just terrify them into, and they killed the whole thing. You know, just completely wiped it out.
Was it? I think it was. I know it was Walmart, but was it Canada? They were experimenting with a 58-foot trailer because they wanted an extra feet. Because like a lot of those communities up in like the Northern Territories, they don't get their trucks as often as we can down here in the South, and so they needed larger trailers. I need to look that up again because I don't know if that ever took off.
Evan says that they passed a law allowing 60-foot trailers. I would have to consult the Book of Knowledge to verify that. Mark says, why not go back to the speed limit of 55 but all vehicles? Okay, number one, hell no. All right. Well, number one, nobody's going to follow it. Okay.
Yeah. There was a song about it. Can't drive 55. Come
on. Now the big problem is the speed limits really are way too low. I have a 2017 Ram 1500. That thing would cruise at 95 miles an hour.
Yeah.
No problem. Now, I've owned some cars from the 80s. When I bought this truck, I went from an 87 pickup truck to a 217 pickup truck. Well, that 87 model was kind of scary at 65, right?
Yeah.
But dude, this thing would cruise 95 miles an hour all day long. The tires can handle it. The suspension can handle it. The brakes can handle it.
As much as people complain about how expensive new cars are these days, I mean, the cars are improving.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm about ready to go find me a square body Suburban and just LS swap it because I'm getting tired of dealing with and this is fascinating. And I hate when I do this on TikTok, I'll find some amazing video and forget to save it. And then you can never find it again.
Yep.
But it was,
you can go through your search. You can go through your watch history.
Well, I know, but it's like finding, what's his name's vault. But it was, it was billed as the Ford CEO talking. So I guess it was him. But anyway, he was talking about how they don't do their own in-house programming. And he said they have 150 different vendors that build components that have their own programming language. And then they get it, and then Ford has to figure out how to make all this stuff talk to each other. And he said that they're getting ready because I guess Tesla doesn't have this problem. The one thing that makes Tesla fantastic is everything is in-house. The components are in-house. The program is in-house. So now Ford has been trying to, they're of course having to compete with Tesla. And he was like, we have to now bring all of this in-house. We've got to learn how to code. We've got to learn how to program. We've got to learn how to build these devices because it's such a nightmare. And that's a lot of that's why we run 99 to 07 model trucks, because the 08 to 2024 trucks are just a nightmare to deal with because they just quit for no reason. And they have gotten manageable. They have gotten better since 2016. They have gotten to where at least we can run the Pittsburgh Power Catalyst. We got DPF alternatives. We got diesel force cleaning. We have things that we can do preventative maintenance on the emissions. but there's these trucks are stupid expensive to operate. And if you don't have a relationship with a good shop like we do, um, and you don't, and you're just at the mercy of the TA, or God help you, the dealership. Um, I was telling my guys today, I think I've told a story on the podcast before, but I had a mentoring client last year that broke down on a Monday morning at 5 a.m. Clutch went out, automatic transmission. And he says, "Hey, I'm at the dealer in Knoxville." And I'm like, "Okay." And that afternoon, they gave him a diagnosis and they said, "Yep, you need a clutch. We don't have it. It's on national back order. We can't get it. It's unknown." I made 4 phone calls. The first phone call was to a guy that I trust when it comes to parts. He gave me the list of how many people in the United States had that clutch in stock, the OEM, the Alliance, and the aftermarket, all 3. I got all 3 part numbers. I got the number that were available in the PDCs in the Freightliner network. I don't know why they were telling my guy that it was unavailable. So then the next phone call I made didn't answer. The second phone call I made, the guy said, independent shop, he said, "I'm too busy. I'm covered up. Call this mobile guy." I called the mobile guy. I said, "Here's the VIN number. Here's the 3 part numbers." And he said, let me check all this out. I've got a spot. I can rent a shop. Yes, I can do your clutch. He went into the dealership where my guy was broke down and bought the clutch off of their shelf. My guy breaks down Monday morning, is hauling freight Friday morning, $4,000 cheaper than the dealership.
Hmm.
I can't justify it. I can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I just think that the dealerships, like a lot of places now, they're short staffed. And like, that's a whole nother topic for discussion. But the other thing too is like when you get these new trucks, or newer trucks rather, parts. I know it wasn't the case in your situation, but when I was at Green Valley, we got brand new 2013 Freightliner Coronados, and those are nice trucks.
Mm-hmm.
But they were the first trucks we had with like the DEF system and all that on them. And fortunately, I wasn't in that truck long enough to really have any problems with it. But we had a cracked windshield within 6 months after driving that truck. And because that truck was so new, nobody had the windshield for it. If you had a 2012 or prior, it went back decades. It was the same shape windshield, no problem. But the 2013, they tweaked the aerodynamics just a little bit. And so we couldn't get a windshield for it. And then the first oil change we had done on the truck, it was over the road. We were at the TA in Ashland, Virginia. And my dad called this right from the beginning. We pull into the bay and we're watching. There was one guy that guided you in, and then there was this new kid. And we're watching the new kid, and this kid would like pick up a part and go, "Huh," and set it down. He'd pick up another tool and look at it and go, "Huh," and my dad just goes, "Oh, this is going to be a disaster." So we go in the restaurant. We're having dinner. About an hour later, they call back and they say, "Okay, everything's good to go. Sweet, see ya." We leave. Park the truck at the hotel for the night. We come back out. There's oil just all over the ground. We're like, what the fuck? So we top it off as best we can. We take it back to the TA, and they go back up underneath it. That new kid went under there when they put the oil pan back under. He tightened the crush nut too tight and just split the oil pan right down the middle. And it's a brand new aluminum oil pan, and nobody had it. We were stuck there for weeks. Waiting on that damn thing. And our dispatchers were pissed because just like you, they book everything out, a week or two in advance. And it's not like we're hauling, dry van goods. We were hauling, I think we're hauling like 1.1, and we had another load of aircraft parts that we were supposed to be picking up. And they had to like redo all the booking on those. So yeah. Good help is hard to find. What can I say?
If the American public could know what we know, they would not so confidently press that buy it now button on Amazon.
Oh, it's a miracle every time. Every time something shows up to my door, I'm like, yes, because I kind of understand a little. Like I never dealt with the Amazon side of it, but you do enough package deliveries and stuff, you kind of know like the miracle that happens just to get it to your your doorstep.
It's amazing, and I've yet to experience throughout the last 3 years. I've been told national back order a bunch of times, and I've been told we can't find it, but there's not been a time yet that I have not gone on my computer, made some phone calls, and had the part on the way.
Awesome.
And my frustration is my friends, the parts professionals, whose job it is to go find parts, can't find parts. But some hillbilly sitting at a desk in West Virginia can all of a sudden find parts, you know, and I think a lot of this is effort. Now, I do know that sometimes they'll tell me, well, here it's at this dealership. They won't sell it to me, but they'll sell it to you, you know, and hell, I've had stuff shipped from Montana or wherever because they'll sell it to me, but they won't sell it to another dealership, which is just stupid. But and I had a situation, I had a blown drive tire. And we were getting ready to put tires on this truck. So I didn't want to buy a brand new tire. I just wanted to get a used tire, Hagerstown, Maryland. And I was in the midst of making a TikTok video. I was working on a truck and driver blows the tire. And okay, turn the video and all that stuff off. And for an hour and a half, I made phone calls and I kept getting, well, I don't know, maybe. Well, do you have a used tire? Well, yeah, I think so.
See, this would make for great content.
And I finally went to this girl. I gave this girl this speech. And I said, listen, I'm in business, okay, to serve people. And if I behaved in my business the way all the people have in the last hour and a half have behaved, I would be out of business, you know? And her attitude changed a little bit. And she's like, okay, well, let me call this guy. Of course, we still couldn't find a damn tire. Finally found one the next day. Right. Which, hey, for all you people hating on me because we use super singles, I said on the side of the road, 8 hours it took me to get a dual tire the other day. So suck it. All right. But that's the thing. We make decisions based on this, not on emotion, not on, well, I like it. We run super singles because this says we have millions of miles of data that says we save on average $7,500 a year in fuel running super singles. We've had 5 blowouts from 2009 to now. We have 5 blowouts, lost 1 rim. $7,500 a year times 10 trucks, we can afford to pay a service call. Okay. And somebody can bring me a damn tire. I hate duals with every fiber of my being. I hate dual tires.
You blow the inside, now it's like, cool, I got to do the job twice now.
Well, and why does the inside always the one that blows? Because damn truck drivers will not check the inside tire, which is why we run the crossfire cat's eye thing that hooks the 2 of them together, so at least they'll be the same pressure. Look, we put tire pressure monitor systems in all of our trucks. You wouldn't believe the number of times I get up in a truck and I find it in the bunk. I find it on the shelf. It's turned off. And I'm like, guys,
it's there for you.
That tire pressure monitor is real important. If y'all would turn the damn thing on, you know, and then they're like, boom, and the tire blows. And they're like, I don't know what happened. I'm like, I bet I know what happened. I bet you were driving down the road with that screen turned off and you didn't have a clue. Nope. And all of a sudden, explosion happens, you know?
Yeah. So we were talking Amazon a little bit earlier. Have you ever taken a tour of one of their fulfillment centers? They offer public tours to them. If you have one near you, do it.
I've been in one, and you look around.
Oh, it's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Oh, I know. It's fascinating.
I don't even remember how I found out I had one. I think it was an ad on YouTube or something, but it was like, take a tour of the fulfillment center, and I was like, all right. So I punched in my zip code, and I was in Philly, and right across the river in Jersey, there was one. So it's like a 25-minute drive from the house. And I was working at the post office at the time. So I show up on one of my days off, and it was like 7 of us on the tour. 3 of the other people, they were from Ashley's Furniture, and another one was from like a plumbing company or something. And I told the guy that was like giving us the tour, I was like, oh, by the way, I'm from the post office. I don't know if you guys care. He's like, dude, we get people from like Walmart. He's like, we don't care. You tell us who you're with. We don't. He's like, we have no secrets here. And after going on that tour, I kind of realized why. Like, just from my experience. So when I'm in the plant at the post office, I was in my mid-30s when I started there. I was probably like the youngest person in the building, or at least on the younger side in the post office. I go into that Amazon warehouse. I'm a dinosaur. It's a young workforce. It's a hustling workforce. Mm-hmm. Everybody's moving. Back in the post office, whatever you get hired to do there, unless you cross crafts, you're doing to the day you die. If you're a forklift operator or a mail handler or whatever title it is, that's all you'll do, and that's all you will ever do. Crossing crafts is a cardinal sin. You go into the Amazon warehouse, it's like, hey, you have a pulse? We'll get you your CDL. We'll get you a degree in this. We'll train you to do. Like, they don't care as long as you have a pulse. They'll have you do anything you want to do in that building. So just that ethos alone, I was like, okay, this is a totally different thing. And then they take you up to the mezzanine level where the robots are, and that was really cool because there's no organizing to it whatsoever. If there's space for it, they cram the item into the robot. And the days of having those giant sprawling warehouses where everybody has to walk like 20 miles a day picking items and stuff, those are gone. You stand at a post, the robot comes to you, you take the item off the shelf, put it in your tote, and then it gets whisked away to a robot. And yeah, the level of automation that they have is astounding.
I'm
and they're
looking
only
forward.
and they're only adding more.
I'm looking forward to the drones. I'm looking forward. You know, I live in West Virginia. I'm in rural West Virginia.
Okay,
I'm gonna be the last person to ever get it, but I want to push that button and I want to hear the whir, and I want it to drop it on my front porch.
People don't realize how loud those things are, and also where you're at. How are you going to stop the good old boys out there from blasting those things out of the sky for fun?
Well, listen, it's a real problem, you know. Well, I saw I think it was Mark Rober on YouTube video where he went to like Africa, and they had these catapults with these drones, and it was all medical supplies and blood and stuff. So you have this doctor in this super remote place that needs, you know, blood. Well, he puts in the order comes in, they put it in this little plane, boom, catapult, goes out, flies out, takes like, 20 minutes to get there, airdrops it with a parachute into the parking lot. They run out, get the blood, save the life. I mean, it's coming, you know.
Africa is a really interesting spot too, because they can leapfrog technical stages. So like, instead of going from like no electricity and no telephones, instead of like putting in electrical lines and then phone lines and then going from a landline telephone to a cell phone, they can literally just like airdrop a power station there and then set up a cell tower, and boom, everybody in the area's got cell phones now. Like, it's wild.
Well, we are big proponents of blockchain and decentralized technology here. And I mean, I believe that the innovations, I believe that the world that my kids, but that are 8 and 17, by the way, it's my daughter's birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah. 17. Holy crap.
Oh man. I have a 3-year-old. I don't know. I'm not ready for 17 yet.
Yeah. Oh, listen, it comes quick. Okay. Cause she was 3 like 2 weeks
yesterday.
Ago, right? Yep. Yeah. But the innovation that is coming, especially because of 2021, 22, the innovation that's coming it's not even fathomable. But the thing about Africa and the third world, they're not spoiled ass rotten like we are. Yeah. They don't have to be retrained. Like I think that the next frontier of innovation and even liberty is going to be in South America and the Middle East and Africa, because there's this lady, I haven't seen her in a while on Africa. She's freaking hilarious. She's like a model, so she's gorgeous. And so she's like doing TikTok videos, and these morons that I know are American. I know they are, or they're at least, first world people. How do you have internet in Africa? And she's like, every night we put the phone in the tree and the internet is delivered. Like we bury the phone in the sand with the potatoes, and the potatoes give the phone. Like, she has so much fun with it.
I think I've seen that video. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
People that haven't been paying attention, because like, if you grew up in the 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you kind of had this understanding of like, countries like Ethiopia, the continent of Africa, the third world, was basically just like desert. Everyone's starving to death, and we got to give this lady on the on the commercial our money, 10 cents a month or whatever, to feed the poor African kids. Meanwhile, you can go on Snapchat. There's an amazing feature on Snapchat called the Snap Map, where you swipe over it and it'll have like a Google Maps-esque view of the world with like heat spots on it. And those are everywhere in the world that people are publicly snapping. And so you like during Ramadan and whatever country you want and whatever holiday they're having, You zoom in on the area, you tap your screen, and you can see what people are snapping in not quite real time, but within the last 24 hours in there. So like if you go into like areas in Africa, there's like suburbs and stuff out there. There are entire metropolitan areas in Africa that if you just took a photo of it and posted it and you said, "Hey, I'm hanging out in Dallas today," nobody would know the difference. They all kind of look like the same concrete blocks that we got out here.
Yeah, we're very. It's funny how here we are in this technologically advanced society that we are in America and in Europe and Canada. How can people with this much access to information be this dumb? I mean, it's shocking.
It's all an attitude. I don't know if you've had Reed on before. He was in the chat earlier. He's a good friend of mine and Michael. He's actually the one who made these hats. He says like that stuff all the time. Like platforms like TikTok, Twitter, etc. These are the greatest communication platforms we've ever had. I mean, these things are superpowers. Yeah. I mean, you and I having this conversation, this would not have been able to happen not even 10 years ago.
Hell, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me crazy when I see people that watch too much television, news, that have such a negative outlook all the time because they're constantly being told everything's going to hell in a handbasket. And I'm like, no, it's not. We live in the safest, most prosperous time in all of human history.
There's an amazing website called humanprogress.org, and they back that up 100% because it's the same. You could watch. The joke is if you're on Twitter and you're scrolling, it's called doom scrolling. You're just scrolling. But it's the same thing if you're watching cable news 24/7. You're just doom watching the news. Meanwhile, like you said, this is the greatest time to ever be alive. We have better communication than ever before. Politics aside, things are always kind of wacky, but there are no more secrets anymore. Like the kind of stuff that like people would have gotten away with decades ago, maybe they can hide it for a day or two, but nowadays it's all out in the open.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
I remember one of there's a guy I really like, Dr. Thomas E. Woods. He's kind of a historian, economist kind of guy. And he had pointed out numbers from OSHA, workplace injury. And
Tom Woods, yeah, I know Tom Woods.
Yeah,
a very failed podcaster, as we lovingly say to him.
Yeah,
no, he's a good guy.
So he had pointed out these numbers from OSHA workplace injuries, and how that since the inception of OSHA, there was a graph that showed how workplace injuries had fallen. The part they left out was that before there was ever an OSHA, the exact same curve existed. And then OSHA went, it's all because of us. And we're like, no, not so much. With all of this access to information, it would be easy to believe that maybe things are getting worse because you're aware of things happening that you never would have been aware of.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and we had an antenna on this hill and an antenna on this hill. And when we wanted to watch the Dukes of Hazzard on Friday night, we plugged into that antenna. And when we wanted to watch the show on the other network, we had to plug in that antenna, and we had 4 channels, and a newspaper. We had no idea what was happening. Now, a TikTok could come up in front of me and it could be from thousands of miles away, and hell, could be from 6 months ago, you know. Or a year ago, and I get that emotional charge, but I finally learned, okay, well, let me do what the people in the comment section never do. At TikTok, I'm talking to y'all right now. We'll post something and there will be questions asked. And I'm going, I got a link in bio. I got a website. I got a YouTube with 165 episodes. But for whatever reason, they can't, but there's a bunch of them. Okay. I'm not going to say everybody. I'm not even going to say the majority. Okay. But it's real close to 50%. Can't pull themselves out of the comment section. Well, let me go look for other information. Do they have a link in bio? Do they have a website? Yeah. Oh, look, they have a YouTube channel. That's kind of an intellectual laziness that gets on my nerves. that I see, especially in America, where just, somebody's got to give me the information. I'm not going to go look for it.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go seek understanding on my own. I'm just going to say, hey, how's that work? Now give me all the information. And I'm going, no, you need to work for it a little bit. Sometimes I'll answer your question. Sometimes I won't. If you're a troll, sometimes I'm going to light you up. Sometimes I'm not.
And sometimes we do a bit of trolling on our side too. We love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Reed a couple weeks ago, last month, he created Lumper Appreciation Week, and I call them the laptop class. These people that are like journalists that they know nothing about truck driving. Maybe they cover the industry a little bit, but I had journalists at Freightwaves telling me that they had like colleagues of theirs from other papers saying like, hey, what's a lumper? What's this like joke I'm seeing on Twitter? Like, what's this thing I'm seeing on LinkedIn and Twitter? And so we're having some fun with it because people outside the industry, they don't know. First of all, they don't know anything about lumpers, and just to have something called lumper appreciation is like people like us in the know where they're like,
Oh yeah,
what
that's
are you talking
hilarious.
about? And for us, the more fun is the ones who like take it absolutely literal.
Mhm.
And they're like, who in their right mind would ever appreciate a lumper? Blah, blah. And we're like, yes, that's exactly the reaction we were looking for.
I love the when you see really good satire that you can't tell if it's real or not,
Yeah,
because you're going,
yeah.
this has got to be BS. But
Yeah.
whew, boy, they're real good at. There's a lady who, I mean, she's gone viral 1,000 times about sued her parents for not getting her consent for being born. Have you seen her?
No, but
Dude,
that rings a bell.
it is, and she just keeps going and keeps going. And she's so good. Her
The
deadpan
deadpan, yeah.
is perfect. And they're just viciously attacking her in the comments. And I'm just sitting here with popcorn,
yeah.
because I'm going, this is amazing because she does it so incredibly well.
Yep.
And then she can go through all of the intellectual arguments for and against
Yeah.
you need to get consent from your baby before you have them.
Yep.
It's awesome. And people buy that just hook, line, and sinker. And the really sad ones are there's a bunch of people that have done very well done satire that have gotten their accounts yanked because people will start, reporting them and all this stuff. And I'm like, how did you, oh, here's a great question. You'll love this. This is one of my guys. This is one of my drivers. How did you guys find the information before the internet? We were told a lot of lies that we could not verify were lies. That's it. We had encyclopedias.
You had
books, and television. I mean, and dude, they could just lie, and there was absolutely no way to verify it. And we talked about Tom Woods. I stumbled across Tom Woods, and he had done this lecture series called The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. And all it was recordings of like college level lectures that he had given. I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. Politically incorrect. You've got me. And I start listening to this stuff and I'm going, there's no way this is real. This can't be real. He can't, these things that he is saying cannot be real. And I went to Wikipedia and I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And then I went to other sources, went to government websites, Library of Congress. Holy crap. Like everything he's saying is true. How, mind-blowing, life-changing information.
Another really good book kind of dealing with that is A Renegade History of the United States by Thaddeus Russell. That's a great book.
Listen, let me tell you what I did. In the spring, early 2020, I listened to Renegade History of the United States. And about 2 weeks before 15 Days to Slow the Spread started, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Let me tell you that is a terrible combination going into a global authoritarian crisis.
Yeah. And
that's a real bad combination.
Different kind of inoculation right there.
Because I'm like, you know what? Fuck everybody. Okay. I'm not doing it. And that was a really dangerous combination, but I'm so glad that
I'm finding the nearest rock to go hide under for the next 2 years while you guys sort this out. Good luck.
Yeah.
And at the post office, so I was a supervisor, believe it or not, at the post office during COVID when this happened. They have a system they have a system there called 204. It's in like the bylaws of the thing, but it's called 204B. Anyone who wants to be a supervisor, or basically any position, they can make you that temporarily. You could be a manager of a plant as a 204B if you want. And basically, it's trial by fire. You try it out. If you don't like it, cool. You go back to your craft. No harm, no foul. And so when COVID was happening, they were like emailing us like different flyers to put up. And it was, I wouldn't say it was fun, but it was interesting to watch like nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew what the hell to do.
No.
And so people were figuring it out as we went forward. But like the first couple like versions of flyers that they were sending us to like nail on the walls and stuff were like, the CDC does not currently recommend masks at this time, because there was a huge mask shortage, and they couldn't say publicly like, hey, please don't go to the store and wipe out all the supplies of masks because we need those for the hospital workers. And so everybody in the beginning is like, okay, masks are stupid and fake, we're not using them. And then it was like, please, everybody wear a mask. And it's like, cool, where can we buy them? So everybody and their mom starts like cutting up T-shirts and selling them on Etsy and stuff and selling those as masks. It's like, come on, guys, you're breathing through T-shirts. You're not stopping anything.
I ran Pennsylvania and New York every week through all of that, right? And I got a couple weeks in, no mask mandates had come down yet. And I walk into the TA in Erie, Pennsylvania, and they've got this poor girl, this poor defenseless girl sitting at a table. And she had a roll of the blue shop towels, you know, a stapler, and some rubber bands. And her job was to stop truck drivers.
No.
Excuse me, sir. Fold them over, staple rubber bands to them, and hand them out as masks. I said, honey, if you think I'm putting that on my face, you have lost your ever-loving mind. It's not happening.
It's so stupid. Like, so I was in Philadelphia during all of this. And so like everybody inside and outside, we masking up. But then like you go to a restaurant, everyone's got their mask on. But then as soon as you get to the table, masks off. And then I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing? This is the stupidest thing ever. By all means, if you want to wear your mask so you're not breathing other people's air, I'm not going to stop you. But to pretend that like you're going to have some magical talisman on your face up until the point you get to the table and then you take it off and everything's fine, I don't know what the hell we're doing here. And you could tell that people. I
ordered this from Fake Mask USA.
I've heard of those guys. Yeah.
And I always had it in my back pocket. And I went to this Dunkin' Donuts in Ohio one day, and I walk up and she goes, "Sir, do you have a mask?" And I went, "No, I can't serve you." So I grabbed this out of my pocket. and she goes, I mean, like my whiskers are poking through.
Yeah.
And she's like, "How can I help you?" I'm like, "Really?
You look like a criminal from like a 90s comedy movie with like the penny stockings over their face."
No, this is the best purchase ever.
I used to call it the Home Depot test. So like I'd go to a Home Depot in Philadelphia. Everyone working there and everyone shopping there's got masks on. But then you go to a Home Depot in New Jersey, maybe 50-50. You go to a Home Depot in Florida, there's not a mask in sight. Florida was like 2 days and they're like, we're not wearing shit. Get off. So I went down to Florida for a wedding, and it was like being in a different country compared to Philadelphia. I mean, to them, COVID was like not even a thing. Like maybe you hear every once in a while somebody get it, but as far as like the fear and the panic, you know, that was ancient history as far as Florida went. And then going back to Philadelphia, it was still another year until they lifted the mask mandate, and then it lasted about 60 days. And then they tried to introduce another mask mandate, and that lasted less than like 48 hours. Everyone was like, fuck this. We're not wearing shit.
Yeah.
And I want to think that like something like that can't happen again, but who knows? All they need is to like scare people enough, and they'll do whatever they want.
I will tell you that, I learned some important lessons through that, because Larry and I were talking when all that first started coming down. And I said these words out loud: there's no way. They will never shut down NASCAR. They will never shut down March Madness, because there will be carloads of rednecks from the South going to, you all think January 6th was something. Watch this, right? You shut down NASCAR and the NCAA tournament, all hell will break loose. Nope. Y'all folded like a cheap card table. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. So they'll just shut down everything and y'all just take it. You know?
Yeah.
And I was shocked, you know, but now I understand better. And I'm sorry, I can't. It's like I can relate it to this thing with brokers. Okay. There are people that will say, I've got it all over my comment section, we don't need brokers. 100% accurate. You don't need brokers. Customers need brokers because they're not going to hire the people that it's going to take to go find trucks for their
Yeah.
loads. They're not going to put those people on payroll. They're not going to pay their health insurance. They're not going to pay their disability. They're not going to keep replacing them because they suck and they're terrible at what they do. You as a driver 100% don't need a broker. You can go book your own freight. You can go build relationships with customers. But the problem is most of y'all couldn't sell ice water to a dying man in the desert.
Yeah.
Because sales is hard.
Yeah. Being an owner operator or just, lease on to anything, sales is like super important. That's why I never, any inkling I ever had of like, maybe I'll look into buying a truck, or it would be nice to have something with like, my own touch. I want like nicer interior. The first time I ever got into a lease operator with Schneider, and I got in his truck and I saw that he had like custom stuff on his dash and nice bunk in the back. I was like, okay, I understand why people do this. I get it. But then you hear the horror stories of like, something broke and then they get behind on the payments and then the balloon payment at the end. I was like, okay, nope, not for me.
It's when we do interviews, we do video Zoom interviews with people, and we don't hold back. I mean, I tell them, I'm like, get ready. You're getting ready to get punched in the mouth. Okay. Because we're going to make real sure at the beginning, you understand what the hell you're getting into, because this is not a cakewalk. This is not something you do halfway. Opening a business is like having a child. And if you don't feed it for the first 3 to 5 years, it will die. Yeah. It's going to take every 100% of your attention. There's no turning it off. You're always in business 24/7, 365. So if you can't handle that, you can't handle being in business 24/7, 365 and always be thinking about that business and what it needs and what it's going to take. Please don't do it. Go find a good company driver that will pay you. They're out there. There are great company jobs for you to do. But do not get into business thinking you're going to work less than you did as a company driver.
Yeah. And this goes all the way straight to the beginning of trucking too, because beginning today, like if you're a new driver, because you get guys that I definitely should never have been behind the wheel in the first place. And the criticism that those people will get well, no one forced you to be behind the wheel where you are. And I push back on that a little bit. I don't know when you talked to Michael Lombard if he brought this up, but there are workforce programs in certain states. Texas is one of them, where if you're unemployed and you're trying to collect unemployment, you have to show the state that you're either applying for jobs or in some kind of workforce training program. And so what a lot of people do is the first thing that they recommend is, oh, we hear from the news that there's a truck driver shortage. How about you be a truck driver? So in order to keep their benefits, they get sent into trucking school because they're told, well, there's a shortage and this is a good paying job and, good luck. And then of course it's an absolute mean grinder. And that's where the whole CDL mill comes from. And hopefully people that get sucked into that wash out before they ever get into their heads that, I'm going to be an owner operator. But every maybe once a week, I'll just search into Google, truck driver shortage, and then sort to news, and I'll see article after article from different local news stations where they're talking about, oh, Joe Blow's trucking school has partnered up with the funding from XYZ state because there's a big pile of cash that says, hey, if you're training truck drivers, here's free money. Yeah, and it drives me nuts.
Well, and to piggyback off of that. They get into that meat grinder, okay, and they see owner operating as a freedom, right? Yeah, yeah. And so in these interview sessions, I'm like, well, why do you want to get into business? Freedom from what? Is always my next question. Freedom from what? Because when there's a freedom from, okay, and I get that. There's also freedom to,
yeah,
right? The freedom to is what we have to be focused on, because owning a truck is not freedom from, right? There's a whole lot more to owning a truck, and Larry calls it the Landstar Early Retirement Program. Okay, the average, this is Landstar's numbers. The average BCO hauls 1.7 loads per week. We do 5.
Right? Oh, wow.
1.7 loads a week. Why is that? Well, number one, nobody cracking the whip, right? You can lease a truck on the Landstar, haul 1 load a week. They're never going to call you.
Hmm.
You can go home as often as you want. You can stay home for a month. They might call and say, are you still alive? Are you deceased? No, I'm good. Okay, fine. Because you'll build up a red file, what we call the backed up, 150, $200 a week or whatever it is. But as long as you keep hauling freight, you'll never hear from them. As long as you're safe and compliant, they don't care. There's nobody saying, hey, buddy, you better get out here and book a load. They don't care,
There's
So,
no reason for them to. You're doing it to yourself.
so a lot of these people are like that teenage girl you went to high school with that had very strict parents, and then she went to college.
Oh yeah, in the exhibition out the window.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's what happens to these truck drivers, because they go from very controlled environment, very authoritarian environment. You will do this and you will do that, and you'll go here and you'll go there, and you'll ask us permission to go home. Well, that all goes away. And they're like, well, I'm free.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're free to go broke is what you're free to do. That's what's going to happen to you, because and that's what we're seeing. And this goes back to roofing trucker. I wanted to circle back to this. We had a hiring problem in 21 and 22 because with the rates the way they were, well, hell, why would I go work for these guys when
Yep.
I can go to Lone Mountain or I can go to Select Trucks and they'll sign me up for $1,500 a week? Well, shit, well, $5 a mile, I can make that easy.
Yeah.
Well, our phone started ringing a lot more in the end of 22 into the early 23 of people going, because I've got 1, 2, 3 former owner operators driving for me right now that owned trucks last year that now they went, oh shit.
And it's because none of them had any. They don't have like the crystal ball. So at Freightwaves we have this product Sonar, and I knew nothing. I didn't even know what Freightwaves was before I got hired there. I called a buddy of mine when I got the job, and I was like, "Hey, I'm leaving the post office." And he's like, "You're insane." I said, "I know." He's, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Freightwaves." And he goes, "Freight nerds, what are you doing over there?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he explained the whole thing to me, and I was like, "Well, I'm not dealing with that. They hired me because I'm a truck driver." But yeah, digging around in Sonar, I realized that if a lot of people had the raw data, or not even using Sonar, just paying attention to what Craig tweets out, you're going to see stuff that's coming before anyone else. Like if you're paying attention to like CNBC, a lot of these other organizations, they're using government data, so they're 3 months behind the ball from the get go. Yeah, Craig called the freight recession, all this stuff, over a year ago, and we kind of like laugh at like NPR putting out an article now saying, "Oh, it looks like we're in a freight recession." Like, no shit, it's only been a year.
Yeah,
but it's the same with the drivers. They have the blinders on and they see that the rates are great now, but they don't think that like, okay, they're great now because XYZ. It could be, there's great demand because this new awesome product came out and everybody wants it, but then that's going to be gone once that demand dries up. Then nobody ever thinks that demand might go down, and now everyone's kind of anticipating demand to go up. They're like, oh, when are we going to hit the bottom of rates? When are we going to hit the bottom of rates? And nothing we're looking at right now is showing us any indication that we have not reached the bottom yet. And it's only going to get worse with contracts too, because the spread between the spot and the contract now is like 87 cents. And as carriers are renewing their contracts with whoever their customers are, the customers are saying, hey, we're getting offers at 50 cents lower. Can you work with us on that? And they go, shit, no. Okay, bye. And that might be their number one customer that's keeping them afloat. And that, to me, that's where you're going to start seeing a lot more carriers wash out, is when those contracts get renewed and they see the rates drop.
One of the things that I find kind of fascinating is, because our Landstar, we have a lot of contract freight, and I've watched the rates, contract rates start to be adjusted, and it's $100 here, $150 there, on something that runs every week, 52 weeks a year. Right. And I was talking with an agent the other day and I said, sometimes I wish the shippers would kind of learn their lesson, but they never do. Right. They always get sucked into this bottom. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, you could have written a contract in February of 2020 for say 225 a mile. And by August, that contract wasn't worth the paper it was wrote on. Right. I mean, it just wasn't, because there wasn't nobody going to touch it. It was $5, it was $6, it was $7 a mile. But they never learn. They will get some bottom feeder that will come in and sign some stupid contract for some ridiculous rate, but they can't provide the service, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it always comes back around where it's important. Our cost right now, we have all paid for trucks. We pay drivers on a percentage. We have an incredibly low fuel cost because we're at Landstar. Our cost per mile right now is $1.58. Okay. It's probably come down a penny or two as fuel has dropped. We might be in the 155, 154 right now. I think that's about as low as it can go because we run a very lean operation. So I think that big picture, $1.50 is about as low as it could possibly go, just because the cost of fuel is the cost of fuel.
Yeah.
Right. The cost of insurance is the cost of insurance. So when you add fuel, insurance, maintenance, and labor, you're going to be at $1.50, $1.75, especially if you're leveraged, you know.
Not that it's any of my business, but how bad are you getting dinged on your insurance right now? Because I've been talking to a lot of guys that when they renew their policies this year, like they saw quite a jump.
That's the beautiful thing about being at Landstar, because
Okay.
Larry came to Landstar in 2013. I came in 2014. You know how much our cargo liability has gone up?
Zero. Awesome.
Zero.
That's great. Yeah.
Zero. So when you're giving 35% of your money. Okay, we're exchanging 35% of the line haul for a trailer, for an agent pool, for billing, for corporation, for compliance. No factoring. I scan the paperwork on Monday, I get paid on Wednesday. We don't wait, we don't factor, we don't lose money, on 180-day terms. If Landstar never gets paid, we get paid, right? So when these people love to say, oh, well, you're giving away all that money, I promise you, sweetheart, you're spending more than the 35% we're giving. By the way, it's Landstar giving us 65% of their money. By the way, it's not us giving Landstar 35% of our money. There's an important distinction there. But people come to Landstar, they don't even read the damn contract, And this was fascinating. You'll love this. So a guy posted in a Landstar Facebook group today. He said, hey, listen, I see all this discussion about the percentage. Well, I just came from a company where I got 90% instead of 65. But I had to pay $1,500 a week for insurance.
Yep.
I had to pay $500 a week for a trailer. I come to Landstar, my insurance cost, $0. My trailer cost, $0. Our fuel discounts, I bet our average cost per mile of fuel right now is in the 40s. The national average fuel surcharge this week was 46 cents. I promise you that if I averaged up our trucks for this week, we're going to be at or below the fuel surcharge. We're making money on the fuel surcharge. So that's the thing that it's like, I love having the conversation of least versus authority, because there are significant differences that should be talked about. If your life's long dream was to have your own numbers and build a 5, 10, 15, 20 truck company under your own numbers, sales department, you're going out, you're booking freight, man, I got all the respect in the world for you. But if you want to be a single truck owner operator and you're so dead set on having your numbers just because you don't want to say you're leased to a carrier, I promise you're spending more money than we're giving in that 35% that comes to Landstar. Because
and you got to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? And
hell no.
Some guys, you can't put a price on pride, but apparently you can at the 90%.
Well, Mark asked, how do you compete with a driver who only needs 83 cents per mile?
Yeah.
Okay, like you just said, let's say our fuel cost is incredibly low. We get good fuel mileage and we have great discounts with Landstar. He can book that. Listen, you can do anything for a short period of time. I mean, I could do cocaine for a short period of time. I mean, I could do heroin for a short period of time. So that's the problem in this cycle that nobody ever seems to learn the damn lesson. Here's a great, you'll love this. So we have a customer at Landstar that I have been servicing since 2014. It's windows, home windows. And I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I walked into the shipping manager's office and I said, "Hey man, how things going?" He's stupid truck drivers. I'll say, "What happened?"
That doesn't narrow it down much.
But he and I have a great relationship, you know, and listen, the only reason that agent has that contract today is because of me. When I came back to Landstar, he was trying to get them to cover that thing, and they wanted round trip, they wanted tolls paid, and he said, "Absolutely not, no way." And they said, "What if we get Chris back?" And he said, "Sold." Right? I made that much of an impression on him with my service level. Okay, so I'm in his office and we're talking. He goes, "Let me show you something." And he pulls up this video footage that had been sent to him by one of the locations that received windows. You see a truck pull up, 6 o'clock in the morning. Driver opens the doors, takes out a window, a house window, and throws it across the fence. And he goes, "That's what I get for hiring cheap carriers." And I'm thinking, okay, I'm safe. So there will be, I have a guy right now, one of my new phase one guys that came to us from working with some Eastern European guys out of Chicago. His stories are great, you know? And he was like, you know, he's like, "Man, I'm trying to take a 10-hour break." And they're like, "Nope, you got fresh hours. You know, we'll just hit the button and
we'll zap your logbook."
Yeah, we'll just zap the logbook and, "Hey, nope, you're not out of hours. You got plenty of hours. Go run that load."
I tell anyone that goes to those kind of carriers, if they can edit your logs, they can edit your paycheck. So
hell yeah, they can.
Beware.
But they can, sure, in an environment like, what is it? Is it Warren Buffett that says, "Be cautious when others are greedy, be greedy when others are cautious"? I think that's Warren Buffett. Not the biggest Warren Buffett fan, but that's solid, okay? Because there will be a bunch in a market like this that will come, but they'll never, ever last.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
There's amazing Twitter accounts. There's one called Rust Belt Kid, and we've talked back and forth for a bit, where he's a manufacturer up in the northern peninsula in Michigan, and he manufactures, basically, it's a type of rebar, and the guys that like show up at his dock, it'll be some guy wearing flip-flops, and it takes him 20 attempts to figure out how to get the trailer on the door, and he'll send videos to me. And he's like, "If I could get a carrier who could just nail it on like the first or second try," he's like, "I would hire that guy every single trip. But because of who I go through, they just send me like these like absolute idiots that don't know what the hell they're doing." He's like, I need to find someone else I can use." And so we've been working on helping them to find better carriers. But you're absolutely right. You get what you pay for sometimes as a shipper. If you're booking these guys for dirt cheap, well, chances are your stuff might not get there on time. And we're seeing that right now with the ports. All the protests happening on the West Coast. Well, if I need to get my freight, I'm not worried about the protests. I'm going to reroute it through the Panama Canal, pay the extra cost, and I would rather deal with the extra cost, but the guarantee of it getting unloaded, rather than maybe it sits offshore.
Have you ever read Mark Levinson's book about the shipping container?
Mm-mm.
Oh, dude, it's textbooky. He's a nerd, so you kind of have to get through all of his charts. But he talks about the world in regulation and the world after regulation. And he gave this example, and you just hit on it, that at one time it was so expensive to move freight across the United States that they would literally go down. I'm trying to think of the timeline. Might have been below South America. Might have even been
Panama
before.
Canal.
It was cheaper to go around South America or through the Panama Canal, whichever it was, to get to the East Coast because it was so expensive to move it by train or truck across the United States because of the ICC and these stupid inflated rates that were set by the state. Well, when there's a great lady on TikTok, I haven't seen much out of her, Logistox. She's fantastic. We interviewed her one time, but she does a lot with the ports and she's very knowledgeable. And especially during the time when we had 100 ships off the coast that couldn't even get into port because of all the backlogs. But there were real problems because Jacksonville and Savannah didn't have deep enough ports that the ships couldn't come, even if they wanted to, you know. So you were kind of stuck because they've been trying for years in Jacksonville. Of course, DeSantis, oh, bring them here. Hey, buddy, they're not coming, right? They can't,
and they can't fit.
We
just had a lady from the Port of Baltimore on What the Truck today, and she talked about the upgrades that they've done. You know, pre-pandemic, they had 6 port calls there, and I think they're over 30 now. You know, so they did some extra dredging, and they're turning that into a world-class port.
Well, this is why I'm so excited about blockchain. In 2017, I went down to Freightwaves and met with Craig and a bunch of the people. It was I'm thinking maybe it was to do what you're doing. It's just timing didn't line up.
What was the year of that?
17. Okay. Before I came back to Larry, which Larry loves to tell the story because I met Larry and was getting ready to come to him, and Craig Fuller called, and I've got this fork in the road. Do I go with Larry? Do I go with Craig? You know, Larry's freaking out because I called him and I'm asking him advice. I'm like, well, man, this guy from Freightwaves, I mean, he just called. And of course, I'm a blockchain nerd, and we were doing the blockchain and Transport Alliance thing at that time. And you know, and I decided to go with Larry, which obviously was the right choice. But I remember being down there, and I don't even think they're in that building anymore. But I was talking to this guy, you know, of course, I'm just amazed, you know, looking around, talking to people. There had been this article that had come out before that talking about the shippers that wasted the most truck time.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm talking to this guy, and it was some, you know, Uber data nerd that Craig had hired. And he's piling through all of this metadata they're buying from the ELD people, right? Which was game changer. Nobody wants to talk about that, but the available data from these ELDs is awesome.
Yeah,
you know,
you track all kinds of stuff on those.
So I'm talking to him, and it was like, it was the city that wasted the most time, and I think it was Washington D.C. or something like that. This is the city that wasted the most time. I'm talking to this guy, and I'm like, so wait a minute, you're getting all this data from these ELDs, so you can track the time that a truck stays on site somewhere. And he goes, listen, I can't just tell you the city. I can tell you the shipper, and he named him. And I went, oh, well, that's a handy ass piece of information. But that's what excites me so much for blockchain, because given that blockchain is an immutable record, there's a lot of things that we can change, a lot of data that we can monkey with and we can manipulate to suit whatever our personal agenda is. That shit's over with blockchain, right? So I am 100. Well, I'm a 92.3% confident that if and when we move to a blockchain-based transportation system, these bottom feeders will never make it, because they're going to be they're going to be dragging immutable data behind them that says they're dirtbags. Yeah. Right. And I'm going to have an immutable record that says I'm an excellent service provider. Here's my rate.
Yeah, it would stop a lot of guys, you know, these ghost carriers, you know, if they get freight guarded or whatever, you know, it would absolutely change double workering.
Hey, that's a problem that we have 100% got to fix.
Yeah.
I just would like to get people to understand we're not going to fix it with the government. Okay. They're not capable. They're not equipped. The state is not going to fix this problem. If they try to, all they're going to do is pour gasoline on a fire. They're going to pour nitromethane on a fire and make it 1,000 times worse than it already is.
Yeah.
It's a legitimate problem, but it comes back to don't get into shit that you don't understand. And I think a lot of double brokering happens because people are not, they're not equipped to do some of the things you're doing. And of course, it's wide open for the scammers.
Yeah.
But you see people like Anik, I don't know if you're aware of her, but she's phenomenal. But she can smell the double broker coming a mile away. She's like, no, I don't think so.
All you got to do is talk to people like her, Paul Bernard, Jaroslawski, guys from Freight Caviar. They deep dive into all this double brokering stuff. Paul actually went to overseas and met some of these double brokers and hung out and partied with them, had a great time until he took his phone out and tried to do a live Instagram, and then a bunch of dudes in leather jackets showed up and was like, "Party's over."
Who is that? I've got to write that down. Who was that?
PBJ, Paul Bernard Jaroslawski. Goes by Freight Caviar.
Freight. Oh, I'm writing that shit down.
Caviar. Yeah, Freight Caviar. I told him, I was like, that's not it. And he's Poland. He's Polish, I believe, and he's got the accent and everything. And so I told him he sounds like the name Freight Caviar, and the guy's 7'6". I mean, he's a monster. I was like, you look like a Bond villain with everything. He's like, oh, thank you.
Well, we have there are there's some Landstar agents that have people that work for them in Eastern Europe or whatever. And my stance on is you get me a freight bill, I don't give a shit. I couldn't care less where you are. And we literally had a Landstar agent killed by a drone strike in Syria.
No shit.
A few years back. Now I've lost I've dug around on the internet and I found mention of it, but dudes in near Aleppo, right? Where all the crazy shit was happening in Syria, and they dropped a drone bomb on his house and killed him, right? But listen, you get me a freight bill and I can go pick up a load and deliver it. I couldn't give a flying fuck where you live. It doesn't matter to me. Are some of them hard to understand? Yes. Do I have to go, hey, slow down, Vladimir, but I've got a couple of these guys on speed dial when I'm in a pickle and I'll be like, hey, bro, hey, Joe, which name's obviously not Joe, hey, Joe, I need a load. Well, dude, he'll dig around, C.H. Robinson, TQL. Hell, I don't care. Yeah. Get me a load. Get me a freight bill. I'll haul some bitch. I don't care. I'm not offended because someone is in another country booking freight for me. For me, I need freight. Give me the freight. I couldn't give a shit less. Now, let me say this real quick. If you have a negative opinion of Landstar, there's a real, very simple way to fix that. Don't haul Landstar freight. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Problem solved. I just fixed it for you.
Yeah, the my way or the highway attitude is very it's very hard to kill off.
Oh yeah. Well, what we see a lot of times is people are willing to blame anyone except the guy in the mirror.
Yep.
That they never, it's the broker's fault, or it's Biden's fault or Trump's fault, or I think Obama's been gone long enough. Nothing's his fault anymore. Look, guys, if you succeed in business, your fault. If you fail, also your fault.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
There's an old Reagan speech. I believe it was either a joke or it's based on a true story about the Soviet Union, but he was talking about how the new prime minister of the Soviet Union takes power and his predecessor leaves him 2 letters inside his desk. He says, day 1, open up the first letter. He says, what do I do with the second letter? He says, you'll know when the day comes. So he opens up the first letter. It's a piece of paper and it just says, blame everything on me. He's like, all right. And then later on in his reign, the riots are happening. People want his head. So he's like, okay, time to open the second letter. The second letter says, write 2 letters.
That's gold. That's gold. Listen, I've been in trucking 25 years. I can't get away from it. You know, I, it's a fantastic, dynamic, interesting way to make a living.
Yeah.
And I've spent about 10 hours today working on a truck, which, by the way, let me get everybody an update because I made a TikTok about this earlier. No, I have not found the problem that I've been chasing for 2 weeks.
Let me check my Discord because I actually posted in there about your video. I was hoping to get some help for you.
Oh, God.
See if we have somebody that's a diesel mechanic.
Listen, it's getting ready, you know, it's getting ready to be a Roman candle, you know. And it, which, you know, it goes to the problem of dealing with shops and mechanics.
Yeah, nothing yet. Damn.
But it's so frustrating because I get an A for effort because I've done most, with the exception of replacing the turbo, I've done everything else. And hell, I spent most of the day putting a damn wiring harness on the thing, thinking, oh, this has got to be it, you know, and it didn't work with a shit.
Damn it.
But I'd still rather have this 2006 Freightliner than a 2024, you know, because I know we're going to fix it. You know, I know we're going to fix it. Somebody's going to come along and be like, oh, well, it's right there. You know, and this Mud Monkey guy has been tagged 1,000 times in my video. So Mud Monkey,
guess you gotta go find him.
Where are you? Paging Mud Monkey. But yeah, it's crazy. But it's such a fantastic way to make a living. I think part of the problem is a lot of people that are drawn to the industry are nomadic, kind of independent loners. When I went to Missouri to pick up a truck, we bought one of those toters that goes on the fifth wheel. Mm-hmm. And Larry drove me up there to Indianapolis, and I get in this truck. And the first day I drove 9 hours in silence. I didn't listen to a podcast. I didn't take a phone call. I didn't listen to music. I just drove 9 hours in absolute silence. And it was like the greatest day of 2023.
Just, you know, white noise.
Oh, I kind of missed, you know, because that's the one thing about driving that I really miss. I don't get to listen to podcasts anymore. You know, I try to when I'm mowing grass, and then the phone rings, and then, you know, something happens to a driver and all hell breaks loose. And, but this is a great way to make a living. But buddy, if you do it wrong, it will destroy you.
Yeah. And what's great too is when you do it right, there's any number of directions you go to. I mean, you talk to any 10 drivers and you get their history and where they go either while they're still trucking or post trucking. I mean, there's the numbers or options are limitless. You know, there was no way they would have found somebody like me with my background and my experience prior to trucking that was a truck driver, unless I had gone through trucking. You know, all kinds of people go into the industry and all kinds of people find their way through it and out of it to find something else on the other side. You know, if you really like dealing with operations or dispatch, you know, you can find ways of dealing with that. As a driver, there's no better feeling than driving for somebody or having a dispatcher who they themselves were a driver. That was a great, you know, Steve, the owner of Green Valley Transportation, he himself was a driver back in the day. So that makes you really feel like you're not just, you know, a number like a mega carrier.
Yeah.
And that really carries over.
Yeah. Well, when my truck broke and I went to Swift, I was like, wow, this is easy. I don't have to book loads. Yeah. If it breaks, I'll just call somebody. Like it was a very therapeutic 30 days because I'm like, well, hell, I don't have to do jack. I can just drive this truck. You know, it was kind of cool.
But you're not growing. You're not doing anything. That's what happened. That's kind of what drove me out of the post office. Is like I was literally set for life. I could have lived very comfortably doing that job till the day I retired. But doing what I'm doing now, like I wouldn't be able to talk to guys like you doing this. I wouldn't be able to talk to, you know, we're coming up to our Future Supply Chain Festival in a couple weeks in uh, Cleveland, Ohio. Like I would never go to events like that. Even just I go there because I'm a Freightwaves employee and I have a great time. But also like events like that aren't really geared towards truck drivers. So it's
Right.
really fun going there as a driver, and I
Mhm.
get to talk to these companies that who like when I talk to autonomous trucking companies, they have like their whole little song and dance that they do either because they're doing it to salespeople or to journalists, whatever. There's not a lot of autonomous trucking companies that talk to truck drivers. So when I get to talk to them, they don't know who I. They might not know may know who I am now. But early on, I talked with like the guys from Gaddick, great guys. But I'm asking them questions like I would ask as a driver. And after 3 or 4 questions, they're like, "Wait a minute, who are you? What are you? No, you can't look at the truck. Please, please, please don't." And I was like, "No. I'm with Freightways. I'm not here to like bust your guys' balls or anything. But it's just fun to like go to events like this as a truck driver because I get to
Yeah. Well, there
talk with these
is,
guys.
and I see it with Landstar, and I saw it with other people. And I think of having this conversation with Craig Fuller years ago. There is a disconnect because those corporate people kind of have their own language.
Yeah.
They, and they have these terms and vocabulary that they use that normal people just can't understand. Makes perfect sense to them,
Yep.
and so that I think having someone like you at Freightwaves will help bridge that gap for the guy, because Craig's got that corporate language. He grew up in it. His dad
Yeah.
was Max Fuller, but regular folks don't talk in those terms. And so it's hard for them to not hear Charlie Brown's mom, wah, 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 wah,
Yeah.
and their brain shuts off.
Oh, the first time they like walked me through sonar and like dealing with spot rates and this and that, my brain just melted and went out my ear.
Yeah. But of course they're talking to investors. They're
Yeah.
talking to the SEC types and the Wall Street types, and they have to speak in those languages. And most of that stuff don't mean jack shit to us,
Yeah.
But if you're going to be in business, you better start understanding some of that stuff.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're going to be lost.
Yeah.
Um,
And I was pretty good at bridging that gap at the post office too, because like I was a driver there, but then when I became a supervisor, I got to see basically how the sausage was made from like one end to the other. So you get drivers that complain about all the bullshit that they got to deal with, and supervisors complaining about all the bullshit that they got to deal with, and then you can come together and be like, guys, we're all dealing with the same bullshit, and we can work, we can make all this work.
we need a South Park episode about trucking. Somebody call Matt and Trey.
Yeah,
that would be gold.
I'll be a
just
consultant on that episode. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Now I can tell you this: there's a 0% chance that I would be doing what we're doing if we were just hauling freight. There's absolutely no way, no chance that I would buy trucks just to haul freight and hire drivers. The only reason I do this is the training and mentoring program. When Larry and I we were 6 or 8 months in, he had a spare truck come up, and we just hired this guy. And of course, he had a sad story, and he'd worked for other BCOs, and they didn't treat him right, and they didn't pay him right. And Larry's like, "Well, big-hearted Larry. Well, you don't have to worry about that here." And of course, the guy was useless. And then we hired another one, and he was equally useless. And it came a point I said, "Larry, listen, brother, I thank you for everything you've taught me. But if these idiots are what we have to deal with, no, thank you. I will buy a truck. I've learned my lesson. I've gotten all the great thing from you. I could have 150 grand income as an independent. I'm good. No, thank you." I drug him onto the podcast against his will, and the phone started ringing with people going, "Well, hey, I'm interested in learning." And we're like, "Oh, there's people that are interested. What the hell?"
Because they
Well,
want to
completely
learn.
turned.
Yeah, not just drive, but actually grow and learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there's been a few that's shown up that said they wanted to learn, and that was a lie. there was a few that showed up, and I tried to murder them in the first couple of weeks, and they're like, "This guy's crazy." I'm not, because my fault was saying, "Well, hell, there's nothing special about me. If I can do it, you can do it." Well, that's not true.
There's a lot of, like I said, there definitely are people that should never be behind the wheel, and how you get them, how you filter that out before they're already behind the wheel and learning, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I have no idea. The first person to solve that is going to solve so much turnover in the industry, and they'll be a millionaire.
Well, we have said many times that we will not hire former BCOs,
Hmm.
and we break that rule over and over and over again. And every time they say, "Nope, I'm the one." Dude, we had a guy last year. His truck was literally getting repossessed. Like,
Oh.
we're in the interview process, and he's like, "Well, they're coming to get my truck next week." And we're like, "Okay." And I said, "Listen, we have a policy against hiring former BCOs. No, no, listen. I've obviously seen that my decisions are not the best. I need you guys to teach me everything that I need to know." He came, he spent a weekend, the son of a bitch drove the truck to Wisconsin and abandoned it. And I had to
Oh.
go get it.
Oh.
I, you know, so
Dang.
we're like 8-0 on former BCOs.
Hmm.
And we swear that we'll never do it again. And then big hearted Larry will hear one of them and, "Oh, okay, well, come on in." And it's a disaster.
So damn it.
Which you
Um,
would think they learn, but they don't. So,
no. We should probably get wrapping it up soon. My wife's already telling me, like, "Hey, what's going
okay.
on?"
All right.
I'm not.
Well,
Believe me, I could go on for hours and hours and
yeah.
hours. It's a problem of mine. I looked at the back catalog of some of your previous episodes, and I saw they were like hour and a half, and I see we're at 2:10 now. So
Yeah.
man, time flies.
Well, I'm so glad you came. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It
this has
was
been great.
good getting to know you and meet you and see where you came from. Well, let me do a quick where did I do with the oh gosh, where is it? There we go. Everyone, I want to update you that Carl is still struggling. Carl's a mechanic that the greatest single living mechanic I've ever met in my life. He's needing a double lung transplant. He's still struggling, not doing well. They could use your help. So scan the QR code there, and quickly let me make mention of our friends at Pittsburgh Power. I can't get things off of Pittsburgh Power is still our sponsor, our good friends. So let them know about us. Go check out Justin on What the Truck. What's your all posting schedule? Y'all doing this every day or?
Yeah, the show's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Eastern. I'm on there most Wednesday, usually Wednesdays, at 12:30. Dooner might pull me on an occasional Monday or Friday episode here and there. So you can find us on Freightwaves YouTube channel to watch that. It's also live streamed on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. I mean, basically anywhere you live stream, you can watch it. Anything on the What the Truck Twitter, 90% of it's probably me. Dooner does a lot of the posting on there too. My personal Twitter handle is at Super Trucker. The name is ironic, I promise.
That's great. I love it.
I had to keep telling the guys at SiriusXM, like, please stop introducing me on the air as Super Trucker, because like I made the name as a joke, and they're like, "No, this is Super Trucker Justin Martin." And I'm like, "No,
That's awesome.
I made it as a joke. Please."
I love it. I love it. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you being here. Hopefully, Larry will make it back from Vegas and be with us next weekend.
Yeah, safe travels, Larry.
And well, anyway, yeah, I've had a hell of a day, so I'm ready for bed.
Good luck with that engine, man.
Everyone, be good and be safe. We'll see y'all next Friday night.